Welcome back to Nick Lenz's Doctor Who review, episode 100. And we're reviewing quite possibly one of the most popular Doctor Who stories of all time, that being a story that does not involve the Daleks, the Cybermen, or the Master. We have the Celestial Toymaker, which for the longest time, this was his sole on-screen appearance until he returned for the 6th anniversary special played by Neil Patrick Harris for one episode. Here he's played by Michael Goff. And you think, wait, the actor's familiar. Is he been in stuff? Yes, he's been in horror movies. And this guy was I believe, the third live-action actor to play Alfred Pennyworth. The first being the Batman serials. Second being, of course, the guy from the TV show from the 60s, and, of course, Mike Goff was the third one. And he was basically one of two most consistent characters who was in all four of those movies, along with the guy who played Commissioner Gordon. Everyone else got replaced, obviously. So, the thing with the story is that most of it is lost. Yes. But those of you curious, then what's up with the weird... Okay, so the reason why this particular thing exists in the current format it's in is because the first 3 episodes were remade into anime remakes. Basically, they just used probably archive footage from the actual show itself, while throwing in additional footage. Now, of course, this particular Blu-ray edition does include the original telesnaps, which the only time I saw this story, that's the only I saw. The only episode that was intact was episode 4. The first 3, after all this time, still lost. The BBC has still not found them at all. So, who are the Doctor? Now, by the way, this is a first Doctor star, William Hartnell. But who were his companions this period of time? Well, there's Stephen. Yes, Peter Graves. Peter Probst, who actually... From what I heard, this guy is a comedian who basically came onto the show. He came on with the penultimate story of season 2 of the show, The Chase, which was also Ian Barba's final story of the show. And this would be his 8th ever story featuring him as a regular. Well, of course, the Chase 1, 2, 3. This only would be his 7th regular story. He would sadly leave 2 stories later. The reason for this? I'm guessing that the reason why they brought him out of the series, I believe his contract ran out. Yes, that was the reason for that. Then we have Dodo, which I gotta admit the actress at the time will look very pretty. Played by actress by the name of Jackie Lane. And she, of course, this actually was her 3rd story she appeared in Doctor Who, 2nd as a companion. The first story she appeared in was called The Massacre. Unlike The Chase, which that's intact, The Massacre is not. Nope, The Massacre is not. You're thinking, why the heck is that? Because, of course, all episodes were lost and not the remake of this one. But the story that came afterwards, that's all intact. Yeah, the 2nd story featuring Dodo, that's all completely intact, no problem. Then you have this story, and then she's featured after this one 3 more stories after this, and then she's written out of the show. Weird thing is, she has not get proper goodbye. Don't know the reason for it. My guess is in the case of Dodo, from what I heard, she was not a companion. From what I've heard about Dodo, she is not a very popular companion at all, because they describe her as very, very dumb, per se. Steven, of course, gets a lot of love from the fans, not Dodo. For Dodo, it's not due to her being a woman. That's not the issue. The issue is how she's written, where she's written like an airhead. But here she's written like a pretty decent person. Yes, though when it's in restoration, Steven looked like something that's not like. It's basically they made him look very beefier than he actually does in the actual live action footage. Dodo actually kind of looks like her. I gotta admit, the likeness for Michael Goff in this particular picture here is very spot on. Now, of course, this last Toymaker, after the story, before I talk about the story itself, excuse me, there were plans for decades to bring this man back. He kind of he came back prior to his return in the 6th anniversary specials. He did come back he came back in some audio stuff. He came back in some novels. Surprisingly, no comics for him. Yeah, no Doctor Comic features him for some weird reason. Yeah, I do not know the reason for it. It's just not there. In the case of his live-action return prior to his appearance in the 6th anniversary special. Like in the case of the Ice Warriors, from what I've heard, there actually was plans to bring him back. But they kept getting scrapped due to lack of interest. It could be also Mike Goff was simply not available to return to the character. Quite possibly, because I'm sure the actor was quite busy. Now, of course, he is probably at this point in the 60s. I think he was probably by far the biggest guest star they got at this point in time. The show itself only been in the air for 2 years by the time this story came out. Yes. Oh, those of you curious, the story is released from April 2nd, 1966, and was included in April 1966. Yes, this was sadly put also for William Hartnell. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This was sadly put his 6th to last story on the show. I say 6th to last story because, well, I'll talk a little bit about here. The reason why he left the show was because of his failing health. That was simply the reason for it. I'll talk more about that when I talk about 10th Planet, when I get a chance to talk about that one. Now, prior to this one coming out, this particular story itself, well, prior to the story being released and in restoration, the BBC had temporarily stopped doing anime restorations for about 2 to 3 years. As for the reason for it, from what I've heard, it was actually due to no money. So, last official release was Bomb a Snowman, and then apparently a year later they decided to release A New Eye Menace. Okay. Yeah, they decided to do this one, and then, so here anyways, Region 1, because like I said, Mom's One was the last one, December 2022. Next one's not released here, which is not a miss. Not for a little over a year later, in January of 2024, which is after Region 2, because BBC. We had that one. You're thinking, okay, was there any other one basically in it besides that one? Well, after A New Eye Menace, then there was, if you're really curious, was this one, The Celestial Toymaker. Yep, a little fun fact, the last story before they stopped before Abominable Snowman was in fact Galaxy 4. Yep, that was anime restored. Yep, and after this, they did another one. They did The Savages, which actually was 2 stories after this one. But that's been it when it comes to anime restoration. Now, if you're really curious, like, is there some that have not been released animated? Reign of Terror has been animated. Yes, it has. So from the last episodes, this was basically audiobooks, actions of it. Marco Polo, this was tested, but was canceled due to Apparently implied racial implications with this one. Apparently thought it was expensive. The Crusade, the Mythmakers, Mission Unknown, Dalek Master Plan, the Massacre of St. Bartholomew's Eve, and the Smugglers. Oh, and in case you're curious when it comes to Lost Stories, is the Gunfighters completely intact? Is there anything lost in this one? No, the whole thing is there. No problem. Excuse me. But, as for the story itself, let's talk about this story. Story has basically the Doctor, Steven, and Dota arriving at this weird planet. By the way, it's kind of unofficially referred to as the Toymaker's planet. There's no official name for it. They just call it, it's probably identified as the Toymaker's planet. Apparently, later on, it's actually one of several worlds that have his own. So, and by the way, before Doctor leaves TARDIS, he apparently is turned invisible. Yes, he's turned invisible. He can still speak, but they can't see him. So they go outside, and then he and the TARDIS disappear. And then we're introduced to, well, before those disappearing, come back and, oh, you turn normal. And of course, you have Steven hypnotized by these screens, which I couldn't tell what it was he was looking at in the telesnaps because they said, oh, don't look at that. Well, basically what they did here is that they pretty much use stock footage from previous stories for this one, which I thought was interesting. So, apparently the screens are hypnotic? Yes. Now, those of you curious, like, why in the world? Now, yeah, so. And then, of course, the Doctor and his companions are invited to play a series of games. You win these games, you get a TARDIS back. The Doctor plays this weird triangle game where apparently the Toymaker kind of has to move by its own, though it's revealed the actual reason why in the final part. Where basically the whole thing is moving these pieces of his triangle around the entire time. And apparently there's 1,023 moves, though occasionally they would skip moves and just do a little bunch of moves once in order to speed up time. So then, of course, we have these series of riddles, and they have to basically play these series of games. And the first game is, well, first, of course, their opponents are two clowns, and the game is a bit of trust. And the whole thing to play it is to basically, well, hit a honk on a button in this car that's very weirdly moving. I don't know if this was originally there in the original footage. It's just that my guess is that they probably made this up in the thing because they're probably going off of what they loosely interpreted from the telesnap for this particular scene. So how this thing works is that the clown just climbs up a rope and then swings sideways and then just walks across, goes to a tube, though it's actually later on he's actually cheating because he actually sees the problem. Steve, on the other hand, does it with a little bit of issue, and basically it's kind of like playing tag, though the game is later to be a draw. They did it again, then the clown actually loses, so they win by default. You're thinking, okay, so what's next game? Deadly chairs. Yes. How dangerous are these chairs? Like you can get electrified, you can disappear, you can get frozen. You can get wrapped in rope. Yes. So they go over like, oh, we have these we have these 4 TARDISes. Now, they're not actually the real TARDIS, by the way. So they open these doors, oh, there's dolls. So like, oh, 4 dolls. So the actual dolls are there. These female dolls. They're actually set up for 2 games after this. So they have the King and Queen playing cards, all with the Jack and the Joker. They put 2 in these 2 particular. Like they try out the 3 in first room, there's 4 in another room. There's 7 chairs. Like one's electrified. The middle one actually is a freezing one, and like. They try the ones, and of course they try the ones in room 2. Now, Dodo actually gets frozen, though he's able to get out of the chair thanks to, of course, Steven. The playing cards themselves, they decide, oh, there's 2 chairs left. and there's no more dolls. So the king and queen themselves proceed to sit on the chair, and they're strangled with rope. And then Steven says, "Oh, we have one chair left. I'll sit in it." Bam, real chair. And then they go next room. And that's, of course, next game, by the way. The whole thing is, look for a key in this kitchen. And their opponents are a baker and a soldier. Okay. So, I've looked on this kitchen for quite a while. There's also stuff about basically a soldier. He's basically acting as a dodo. Probably because she's a pretty face, because the actress at the time probably looked was probably, if you look at her, this is my estimate, I thought she was a very lovely woman, Jackie Lane. Yes, I thought she looked very lovely. Though, in case you're curious, how old was she when this was released? This was 1966. She was 25 years old. Yeah. I'm not a fan of the name Dodo, but at least got a pretty face. Yep. So, as look on the kitchen, apparently this key looking for is inside of the pie. They smash the pie after a little bit of shenanigans with these plates that have TARDIS on it for some weird reason, which I don't know if that was originally there in the original story. They probably decided to do this instead because it was the best thing probably anyone to think of. So, then of course the whole thing next to him is to dance. And thanks to your two get on the dance floor, because that's part of the game, they're able to get the TARDIS, and it's a fake. That is probably like the 4th, 5th fake TARDIS have been in. So, and then of course, next room is the test. It's all about Lady Luck, for example. So, and then of course, the Toymaker, by the way, at one point he turns Doctor Invisible again, but he leaves his hand visible. Later on, he does turn off his voice. So, he plays the game. So, the next game is to play hopscotch. You throw down dice, and you get to basically hop across these things. They also explain the rules as the game goes on, like if you have a player occupying the same space, the player already there has to go back to the beginning. And if you leave the square when it's not your turn, also go back to the beginning as well. Steve went back to the beginning in this game roughly twice. And also the fact that this, by the way, it's a chubby schoolboy who is always all grown up. In the case where the animation presented him, I'm like, I can kind of buy him being a schoolboy, but in the live action footage, no, this is a full grown man. He hates losing, so basically he's a dirty cheater. At one point, he is defeated by one of his own traps because he sprayed powder on this square. And he dies by electrocution. Eventually, again, it's like, oh, look, game's over. And like, oh, look, the doctors are back normal, no problem. But he has one move left. And then, of course, you can do some tries like, nah, it won't work. Like, first time, doesn't work his own voice. And then he's like, move move 1023 does the phone tries in the Toymaker's voice. And then the play explodes. You know, like, oh, it worked come again. Not in this show. Nope. That happened in, after this for a long time with just books and just audio dramas. Weird, like I said, this guy never appeared in Doctor Who comics. I'm surprised Titan has never brought this guy back. Isn't that weird? Titan has publication rights to Doctor Who. They bring in the Cybermen, the Sea Devils, the Silurians, the Master, obviously, but not the Celestial Toymaker. One of the coolest villains in Doctor Who history. Guys got a really good look for him. Yes, basically, you might think, oh, is he a racist character? No, not really. He just basically like dressing that way. Yeah, the garb itself is a bit Chinese per se. Some might think, oh, basically, is Mike Garb racist? No, he probably was told to wear that. It's just a really neat outfit for him. He's very calculating. Think of him as Doctor Who's version of the Grand Master. That's kind of what he is. And it's all about playing games. But all in all, really good story. I enjoyed this one. The other thing I like with animation is mostly how Steven looked. Dodo looked fine. The Toymaker looked fantastic in his animation. The Doc looked really good too. It just... Steven, oh my gosh, he looks so uncanny in this footage. Yep. Oh, by the way, this thing also included the story in color. And plus, you can also watch all 4 episodes in the anime footage. in the original, either the one episode on here, or you can watch all 4 episodes animated. It's your choice. Yep. But for now, that's going to be the last first Doctor story for a while. The next story, probably, according to ways my stack, it's probably going to be a second Doctor story, though it's one to discuss again. But mainly because basically they finally animated a missing episode. Most comes to another time. Okay, so that's pretty much it. Particular view. Please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn notifications. Next up is a comic court, and it's on to Our Last Crusade, The Rise of a New World. Okay, thanks, Bill.